have today when you got up this morning?
Oh yeah.
Few of you. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
How many of you actually had that thought run through your mind? Someone? I know that you did. Yeah. Maybe that something. We were driving back from Kihei this afternoon, and we were in traffic. And I remember the time when I was with Richard, and we were caught in a snowstorm and just unbelievably bad traffic coming out of the ski resort. And we just decided, what's great about this? What is great about this? And we started having a good time. We figured out exactly what we wanted. We got out of there. We made it to the health food store on time, got to the hot springs, the whole deal. And I thought about that when I was driving today, and I looked over and I thought, what is great about this? And that view, right, did you see that view of the West Maui Mountains? It was unbelievable. It was spectacular. Turned up the music a little bit. So sometimes just creating the best day ever is just a shift in perception. Sometimes you find that you just shift your perception and the situation completely turns around. About 4 or 5 months ago, I did a talk in San Diego up at a house in, what area is that? I guess it's Encinitas. And there was, Ranjini was there, and she had 2 of her patients there. And one of them had breast cancer, and the other one had rheumatoid arthritis, bad. And she was like, you've got to tell them about raw foods. And so she got them there, and we started into the lecture, and I knew their stories. They didn't know I knew them. So in my lecture, I start saying, how do you create a miracle? And I don't know. And many of you might ponder that. How do you create a miracle? And then I said, a miracle is really just a shift in perception. Someone who has cancer might say, oh, why me? How come this happened to me? Why do these things always happen to me? And a shift in perception is, this is a blessing in disguise. This is the best thing that could have ever happened to me. This is the greatest moment of my life. I'm so glad this happened. Cancer is my friend because it's here to tell me something. And that shift in perception is what creates the miracle called healing cancer. Because one of those people in that audience, one of the women, got it and the other one didn't. And you know what? The one who didn't ain't here anymore. Just a few months later, she's not here anymore. And the other one called me probably a few weeks ago. Maybe it was about 6 weeks ago. She's doing good. She's moving. She got it. In fact, she had just done the Landmark Forum course after I talked to her. One of them got it, the other didn't get it. That's the difference between life and death. A shift in perception. Because no matter what's happening around us, no matter the millions of things that are happening at this moment, any one of you could at this specific time concentrate on the blood flowing through your right forefinger. There's so many things we can focus on that there's a lot of good to be focused on. There's some bad, but that's just got to be left for someone else to focus on, not you. You got better things to worry about. How to make it the best day ever. It's a lot better to worry about that than, why is me? Why is this always happening to me? How come these things happen to me? Whenever someone says that to me, I would say, you know what? Those things just seem to happen to people like you. I don't know. When people say, why is this happening to me? I don't know why these things happen to you. Maybe you could ask a better question. Like, how can I make sure that every moment I'm healing, I'm rejuvenating my body? And when you do that, the power of questions works in your favor. We touched on that last night. The other part of the thing we touched on was health is something that you attract by the person that you become. And it's becoming the type of person who can do it, who can eat the raw foods, who can handle the peer pressure, who can be in an uncomfortable situation every now and then when you can't get food. By becoming that type of person who can handle it, then the health shows up. Health is not something you go get. We're going to go buy it. We're going to go get this pill or this powder or this medicine or whatever. It's something you attract by becoming that type of person. Become the type of person. Use the power of questions. Those are huge factors and just getting control of yourself, of your body. This body is extremely delicate. It's made out of very, very fine and refined tissues that are soft and malleable like tubes. And when we put in abrasive, heavy things in there, things that are like pizza crust. You ever rub the bottom of a pizza crust? How abrasive that is? It's got the little things on it, like almost like sand. Or if you put in corn chips in there, it damages or rubs these delicate organs in the wrong way and forms, just like you would have on your hand, a callus. And a callus formed in here eventually begins to thicken up and thicken up and thicken up. And here comes coffee, here comes donuts, here comes pizza, here comes turkey sandwiches, here comes milk, here comes bread, here comes whatever. That digestive system begins to go, wait a second, hold on, whoa. And it just layer after layer starts getting formed on those tissues. And that is such a blessing. That is such a blessing, because if that didn't happen, we'd all be dead. We wouldn't have made it this far, because it protects us. The thing is, though, one day that little lining turns on you, because it gets to have a life of its own. And it has thickened up to such a point that little Joe larva ends up in there and goes, oh, I found a brand new home. Perfect. No one's here yet. And it sets up a little base. And little things begin to live in that. And then eventually, the body's not able to absorb anything through that. And that's the situation a lot of us find ourselves in when we first begin this type of diet. And we may not even know it. We may not even know it. Because that tube that lines our entire system is really just that, a 35-foot long tube. And if you've seen what happens when you run chlorinated water through a pipe, it begins to erode and decay on the pipe, and there's calcification that occurs. And eventually, one day, they got to come in and put a new pipe in. So, for all of you, this is putting a new pipe in now. To clear out that debris, to clear out that stuff, the first thing is that first step we talked about yesterday, the most important piece of this whole puzzle, and that's to take in that color right there. And those of you who've studied the chakras, you know what's the color, right? Red, orange, yellow, green, heart chakra, blue, indigo, violet. And most people die of what? Heart failure, heart disease. And that ain't there at all. And if we eat green, we get more of a heart. Someone says, my heart's not in it. You know, that's a real phenomenon. Someone says, he just doesn't have any heart. That's a real phenomenon. Or my heart goes out to you. Because we actually carry emotions, and part of our brain is in the heart. You ever seen the studies or the books written on people who got heart transplants? That's fascinating. Mm-hmm. Where they begin to take on some of the characteristics of the people who had their heart, or whose heart they have. Start to use words they never used before. Start to relate to people in a different way because they have a new heart. So the whole idea that our heads can change our brain and that's our whole body and this is how we function in this life by using this computer up here. Really, the computer's everywhere. It's in every cell. They've taken salamanders and scrambled the brains. Literally, what they did originally is they took two hemispheres of the salamander's brain. They switched them. Sealed it back up, put the salamander back. Salamander functioned perfectly. No problem. They took the brain eventually and scrambled it up. Put it back in the head, closed it up. Salamander functioned perfectly. So every part of our body is carrying somewhat every part of our experience. And if we are experiencing pain or emotional disorder in our life, then these organs pick it up. Because these are, someone says, you know, I've got the gut instinct, remember that? Or if someone's real angry, they say it's a liver situation happening. Every one of these organs is reflective of all the others. If you've seen reflexology, they show like the foot, and they show how the foot is reflective of the whole body, how the liver and the colon and the brain and the internal organs are all laid out on the bottom of the foot. Well, these organs also contain a reflection of every other organ in our body. And if we're running a bunch of glue through here, and some of the organs start to go, oh, another organ goes, oh no, and they tighten up and they get deformed, then other parts of our body start to get misshapen, start to have tension in them, like, oh, I don't know, I got this back thing going on here, which could just be a clogged up colon. Because if that area of the colon is chronically swollen up or chronically tense, it will reflect at the other areas of where that colon, like this part of the colon right here has a certain area that it reflects to. That part of the colon has a certain area that it reflects to. And the stomach as well reflects the entire body. The point that I'm making here is that when we start to clear this out, when we do fasting, when we do an herbal cleanse, when we do just a normal raw foods diet, when we take the antidote if we ever slip up, which is, what's the antidote? We should all be getting this by now.
Green juices.
Oh, A+ for him. That's right, that's the antidote. Then this starts to go, oh, a little bit more alkaline. Remember, alkaline is open, is loosening, whereas acidity is tense and congested. And if we have all those areas with that mucus lining in there, we want to loosen that up as much as possible. As we start to loosen this all up and get the stuff out, then our organs come back into their proper positions and we completely change our appearance. Because if this appearance of that colon is all torqued onto one side, well then we're going to be a little bit torqued on that side. We'll be tight and tense on that side. And as we get that thing back in balance, we'll go, wow, feeling more beautiful, feeling more in symmetry. How do we really approach this problem? Well, there's different ways that other people have done this. I'm a big believer, first we get the green juice in. What we have to do though, if someone's in a crisis situation, is unlock the colon, because that's draining the bathtub. And it doesn't matter how much soap we pour in that bathtub, try to scrub things over, eventually the soap is going to become toxic if it's not draining out that bathtub plug. It's got to go out the drain. So the first thing is you pull the plug on everything. Just let everything flush out. Someone has cancer, colonics. Someone has diabetes, colonics. Someone has parasites, colonics. Almost every single disease that there is, forget the food thing at the beginning, they got to get in and have that colon opened up so that stuff starts flushing out. A lot of times we can start doing the raw foods and we're opening up all these toxins in our body, but if that drain is plugged, it's going to try to go out our skin, it's going to try to go out our mouth, it'll try to go out our urine, it'll try to go out our nose, our saliva, however it can do it. If we've got tons of congestion down here, if we fast for a day, you'll know how much congestion is here, if you're wondering, by how much migrates up your colon and migrates out those intestines and up that stomach and up that esophagus and into your mouth. Because things always flow from an area of greater concentration to an area of lesser concentration. And every one of these organs here is lined very delicately with a thin layer of mucus. And if one area is very congested with heavy, thick mucus and lots of undigested food, well, the body goes, whoa, we're not getting the bombardment up from up there anymore while we're fasting, and begins to allow what's ever down there to migrate up into the mouth. That's why people have bad breath when they wake up in the morning. Because all that stuff that's congested in here, it starts to migrate its way up. And Arnold Ehret called it the magic mirror. You put your tongue out. And if you got a coating on that tongue, that's what's coming up. That's a way to gauge it. You'll find that if you do colonics or if you do an enema whenever you're feeling that your glands are swollen, you ever felt that? And your glands swell up here, just about to be sick, do an enema immediately. It's just your lymphatic system's a little bit clogged up. And your lymphatic system is your drainage system. We're going to get into that in a bit. And it drains into your colon, and then your colon has to eliminate that lymphatic fluid. If this is all opened up, all the lymph will drain, and you'll get it out of your body. Part of, again, the reason why we're doing yoga here is because these sensitive little organs are all wound in together, and when we squeeze them and we torque them and move them and squish them over, that we're more likely to get things to break free, and we're more likely to get some looseness and some malleability and flexibility in those organs so they can process things better, and you get better flow, better digestion. That's a big part of digestion, is just flexibility. There's a whole class I teach on digestion, how to have good digestion. I think one of the ways to have good digestion is just to stand up while you're eating. Instead of compressing all these organs in, look how delicate those organs are. If you compress it in, then they get stuck. But we've got this tube here, we've got to let that stuff flow through us. But moving on from that. Okay. The way that our body works, I'm going to show you this little diagram. I think it's pretty appropriate for what we're doing. The way that our body works is that when we basically have 3 tube systems that we are. The tube systems are your food tube, which is right from the mouth all the way through the esophagus, straight down to the stomach. Stomach empties out into the duodenum and down into the small intestines, and that leads into the colon, eventually where your appendix is, and the colon winds its way around to the anus, and there you go. That system, with little cilia that swim in it, feeds your bloodstream in the portal vein, and your blood delivers whatever filters through into your liver, and your liver goes, okay, I recognize this, don't recognize this, we're going to hold on to that for a while. Okay, we'll let this pass. I can't check all the passports, so sometimes things get through that shouldn't get through, but generally it does a pretty good job, especially when we're young. The liver delivers that food or those nutrients back into the bloodstream. The blood delivers that to the lymphatic system, and the lymphatic system delivers the nutrients to each cell, because every cell in your body actually swims in the lymphatic system. So this is kind of a representation of how that looks. Does everyone see that? You've got your food canal here, you've got your blood system here, and then you've got your lymphatic system here. If your muscles are moving around, that's lymph fluid that you're feeling in there. That's not blood. You have 4 times as much lymph fluid as blood. Everyone know that? That's a big thing. It's a big myth out there. Oh, well, someone's blood had this particular parasite in it, and that means that they've got to have that exact amount of food to make sure that they're getting in that 7.351462 pH level. And that's just totally crazy. That you've got much more lymphatic fluid, and the pH of your lymphatic fluid is much more important than the pH of your blood, commonsensically, because your cells are living in your lymph fluid, not in your blood. You getting that? So everything gets in the lymph fluid, and your nutrients are being absorbed, and your waste from each cell is being excreted. And there's 2 ways in which the lymphatic system gets rid of waste. Some of it comes back into the blood, a big portion, and some of it is emptied right out back into the food tube down by the colon and the small intestines and flushed out that way. It's much easier to get things in here than it is to get things out. That's the whole game. Because because the body goes, okay, we're getting past the gatekeeper, boom, 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 and everything kind of flows to get it in there, but to get it out, well, that takes a little bit of work. It takes a little bit of moving your body, because your lymphatic system doesn't have a pump like your heart does. Your lymphatic system is pumped when you twist, when you move, when you lift a weight, and your lymphatic system is moved when you breathe. Your lungs will pump your lymphatic system, whereas your heart is always pumping to keep that blood flowing. So to get it in there is easier than to get it out. And a lot of us have done this type of job where we've pushed and pushed and pushed junk into that lymphatic system to such a degree that eventually those cells are literally drowning in gook, undigested stuff. And when someone fasts, they burn up and use all that undigested stuff. That food that's just sitting there, that's half metabolized fat, cooked fat that's worked its way in there, undigested protein that's gotten in there, chemicals that have gotten in there, half broken down cells which weren't totally remetabolized and excreted, the waste wasn't excreted, waste from cells that's sitting there. When that stuff leaves and this is clear again, that's a whole new life. Because you'll see clearly when this is clear. So it's not about getting your blood stream clear, really. That's only a side effect. It's really about getting your lymphatic system clear. Your lymphatic fluid, again, is about, you have about 4.5 times as much lymphatic fluid as blood. The best ways to move your lymphatic fluid are exercise, yoga, deep breathing. We've been doing some of that, which is so awesome. The pranayama, the ujjayi breath. That'll move it. Getting on a trampoline, powerful. You've heard that, the cellular sizer, because it forces these cells to work against gravity. It's lymphatic fluid pumping and moving. And any time that you feel your glands here are swollen or your glands here are swollen, that's meaning that your lymphatic system is backed up. It's an indicator of that. Okay, where is this leading to? When we have a lot of thick fluid here, it thickens up here and then thickens up this area here initially. That's how we're all born into this world. This was born in this world as a raw food eater. So we thickened up this tube, which is supposed to be very clear most of the time. Thicken that up. This has become thickened up as a default. When we start to clear out our food, we have to be careful, because if we thin out what's in here, then the blood and the lymphatic system begin to look over in the food canal and go, wait a second, there's nothing in there. Let's start emptying some of this back excess pressure. And some of it starts to come back in, some of it comes back into our blood, some comes into our food canal, and then all of a sudden you get the, the rashes and the fever, and you feel like, I remember when I first met Richard, they went through all their pots and pans out. A few weeks later he was going, uh-oh. Stuff started coming up, because this all of a sudden is real dense, but this isn't, and these two reflect each other very closely. Your food and your bloodstream reflect each other very closely. My dad used to do surgeries, and he told me, look, you don't give a patient food at least 8 hours before a surgery, at least, and preferably 24 hours. Why? Because if you put in a bunch of cheeseburgers and vanilla milkshakes in there, that blood's going to become thick and soupy, and you're in there with a heart condition trying to clean someone's arteries out, and they could die because blood ain't flowing. The lymph looks over here, sees what's happening with these two, starts dumping stuff back in, and it could be too much too fast for you. Be careful. Some of you who are new to this, you just go at your own comfortable pace. There is no rush. Ways to slow it down. If you're having a detox, this woman called me up one time and she was just she was over here, she was over there. She was freaking out, and she was fine, and she was screaming, and then, she was all over the place in the space of 5 minutes. Because she was detoxing so hard, and all these emotions, remember all those emotions are in there, trapped in those different organs. Memories and different congestions that are reflective of other things that are going on in our body, and areas of our brain where we're holding back emotions and such. So I just said, look, just eat something cooked. Anything. So she grabs a piece of bread and she eats it. And instantly she was back to normal. Because if this is thickened up all of a sudden, if you put something cooked in here and you're going through a detox, it stops immediately. And then you'll know that it's a detox. It stops instantly. And then people go, oh, well, it must be the bread saved me. But actually it stopped what was happening. Be aware, this is important stuff. You've got to be aware of this. If you're doing an all raw food diet and you feel like you're churning something out of the muck that used to be there and it's got to get out now, you can slow it down if you eat the heavier side of stuff. Eat salads and fatty things only, no fruit. If you do only fruit, guess what happens? This totally thins out and everything starts coming out. Or if you fast, then everything comes out quickly. Because there's nothing there anymore. Okay, let's get rid of it all right now. And that works for some people, but not for everybody. Some people, they fast and they're completely wiped out. I mean, some people could die. They have mercury and cadmium poisoning, lead poisoning. All that stuff starts coming back into the bloodstream, shaking. One guy called me from Israel. He was shaking. He was doing a fast. I said, eat something immediately. So he starts eating figs and it went away. But he had, that's mercury poisoning, or lead, or cadmium, one of those, that causes that. Because all that stuff, those lead, mercury, cadmium, and other heavy metals, are all arsenic, etc., is all found deep buried within the lymphatic system in your bone marrow. It's hidden in your bone marrow. And that's the last stuff to really come up. Because your body will get rid of that last. When it's ready, when it thinks, okay, it's time, let's move it out. Okay. Is there any part of this process that you don't understand? What I wanted to give you here is just the idea of the way we eat food controls the thickness and density of the tissue fluids, the blood and the lymphatic system, and that is, if we're eating no food, then these become less dense, and the lymphatic system begins to unload and purge toxins, poisons, undigested stuff, or whatever. And that's just a little bit of a guideline to use as you go farther, because I want to give you tools that wherever you go and you move on in life, you're able to gauge where you're at with this whole thing. Detoxification doesn't take 8 months, it doesn't take 2 years, it doesn't take 5 years, it is ongoing and it is perpetual. If you've eaten cooked food for 50 years, there's going to be a cleaning house that needs to be done. And it takes time, it takes a long time to get it all out. And it can happen quickly. I mentioned last night, or actually Paul mentioned, our friend Rick Lambert, who actually was in his 40s, was in very, very ill health, very bad. He was going down with heart disease. In his studying, became a vegetarian, eventually became a vegan, became a raw foodist, and here he is, and he's 70-something years old, and he looks as good as anybody you've seen. But it doesn't happen. I remember talking to his daughter, and his daughter said, "Oh, he's an angry man." It took him 5 years to have its way with him. But see, either you stay angry or you get off the diet. Either you stay angry and get off the diet, or you stay on the diet and the anger is released. One or the other. You can't stay angry and stay on this kind of diet for very long. Eventually something's going to say, okay, you're going one way or the other. Here we go. If we have that picture, every one of you can picture what paradise is looking like. We're pretty close to it here. What we have here, the resources. And we all know intuitively, instinctively, that paradise is heading in the direction of laying on the beach with a mango and a coconut. And just whereas the other picture, the other direction we could go is gnawing on the hide of a cow. You know, with little fleas jumping at her teeth. And you're going to go out there and you're going to talk to people, and you just tell them that and say, which way are you going? Because it's just like that diet thing. You're either going one way or the other. You're either growing or you're dying. You're either becoming more flexible or less. And that inspires the heck out of me that all of you came here because you are going for more at some level, and you're willing to put your hard-earned income, your time, your energy, your focus to be here to get that little bit extra. So I'm going to give you everything I got, and if you want more, you just ask. Because we got something good going on here. This works. Does it really? I mean, I can give you these details and show you how it works and why it works and all that, but really the major thing is that it does work. And you'll get where you're going. If this has to happen slowly, so be it. Let it happen slowly. Because once you set the direction, you'll arrive at the destination. Alright, enough of that. I want to talk about minerals. Before I do, though, I want to tell you a little story about a book I read. I'm a big believer in reading. I read somewhere, it was Charlie Tremendous Jones in one of his books. He says, Everything that you will become is dependent on who you meet and the books that you read. And that was revolutionary to me. Because at that time, I had gotten on that whole trip of just reading a book, finishing this book, getting the next book, reading the next book, going one after the other, after the other, after the other. And you begin to accumulate a little bit of insight and knowledge about people's experience who've gone before you. Now, this is something that nobody ever in the history of this planet has had access to like we do today. 500 years ago in medieval Europe, you couldn't find a book. You don't even have a book. Everything you knew, you learned from people around you, and that was it. Or from your own intuitive insight about things. We have such a massive amount of abundance that's around us. Experience that's captured in books that's around us. Every one of us should be at the top of our field, whatever we're in, because all you got to do is just read one book in your field a month, and you're already 12 times ahead of your next best competition. People read one book a year on average in their field. What if you read 12 books a year in your field? You're automatically at the top. Just that. You want to know how to succeed with a raw food diet? Read about it. You'll succeed with it. You'll figure it out. You'll find the right... One of the books will have it. You'll go, uh-oh, there it is. I've read books where I've gone through the whole book, and all of a sudden, there it is, way at the end of the book. Oh! One sentence. Sometimes in the beginning of the book. I read one book one time, opened it up, read one paragraph, and in that paragraph was one of the best sayings that I ever heard. And it was, I must do the most productive thing possible at any given moment. I must do the most productive thing possible at any given moment. So if I'm in a moment with somebody and all of a sudden that pops in my mind, I know that's what I got to do. And by the way, that's one to write down. You got a little journal there. Write that down. I'm telling you. That's a revolutionary saying. That works powerfully. Any situation you're in, you ask yourself the question, remember the power of questions, I must do the most productive thing possible at any given moment. What is the most productive thing I can do right now? How can I maximize this moment right now? So I was reading a book, and it was Conrad Hilton's autobiography. It must have been sitting in my library. It belonged to my dad. I'm sure he had it since the 50s or early 60s. And it was his autobiography of how he built the largest hotel chain in the world. To me, that's fascinating. People who can build a business that big, because the business we've got going, we've got 10 people working there. I'm going, gee, I'm pulling my hair out trying to get everything organized. I'm going to run this whole thing. And there's people out there with, like last night I gave that example, 35 companies. How in the heck did this guy build his empire? So I'm reading this book. One of the things he did is he prayed. He believed in the power of prayer. And whether your spiritual beliefs are one thing or another, well, pretty much through all religions, you'll see the power of prayer is there. It works. It's just one of those things that works. You don't argue with it, you do it. But he started to tell the story about how he actually built that empire. How it all came about. When he was a young guy, he grew up with his dad in Socorro, Mexico. New Mexico. Which is fairly close to, where's that near? Is that?
Socorro's near south of Albuquerque.
South of Albuquerque. Way pioneers in the 1800s. And they were middle class, and his dad was a trader, and they had times been wealthier, and other times had been more middle class, and kind of back and forth. Well, when he was younger, he about 23, 24, decided, well, I'm going to set out by myself, I'm going to form a company, I'm actually going to create a bank, and see how that works. So we got 30 investors, and there they set up a bank, and World War I came around, and he decided, being very patriotic at the time, he was going to go to World War I and fight in that war, and he sold his bank. When he came back, he wanted to get back in that business. And he made a lot of really amazing connections being in that business, being in the banking business. He knew a lot of powerful people in the state of New Mexico, which had become a state by that time. He knew a senator. He knew other wealthy businessmen in the state. He decided to ask for advice. He decided to ask for advice, the people around him. What can he learn? Well, he went to this senator who was actually on his deathbed in a hospital in Albuquerque. And this senator told him, he said, look, Conrad, go to Texas right now. And he thought, well, maybe I'll go to Texas. There's an oil boom. Go to Texas right now. He turns around after hearing all this and he decides he's going to walk out. And he's thinking, okay, maybe I'll go. I'll get that arranged. And he said, no, stop. Go to the train station right now and go to Texas and set up your bank there. Don't even wait one more day. And he was so struck by this that he thought, wow, okay, I'll do that. And then the guy said, well, look, I've got a guy who lives in Illinois. When you get set up down there, I'll have him come down and manage what you've got going and help you. With so many lessons in this little vignette about how this whole thing got started with Hilton Hotels. So many lessons. So he went there, and he went to city after city after city, and he finally ended up in a small town, the name of which is escaping me. It's like, it wasn't El Paso, another city like that at the time. And he goes into a bank that was for sale. And he talks to the guy there and says, you got your bank available for $75,000, which is a lot of money at that time. And by the way, Conrad Hilton only had $5,000 in his pocket, which is, in today's terms, that was a couple $100,000 in today's terms. This guy was asking $75,000. Well, he's going to go in and bid on the bank. And the guy ups him. He said, look, $80,000. Your sign says $75,000. He said, $80,000 or no deal. So he walked out. And he goes across the street to the hotel. He walks in the hotel, and everybody, bell rings, and everybody jumps into a seat like musical chairs. He's like, what's going on? So he goes up to the main guy, the lobby guy, and says, you know, I'd like to get a room for the night. He goes, oh, you're not going to get a room tonight. There's no rooms left in this town. You can see there was an oil boom going on, and everybody was wildcatting, out there trying to drill a well, trying to strike oil. And he looked around, and everybody who was in that lobby was going to be spending the night in that chair. And they were paying for it. So he ends up talking to the guy. Turns out the guy's the owner. And the guy starts complaining, I gotta get out of this business. What am I doing in this business? This is crazy. And he starts him out. He says, well, would you be interested in selling? The guy says, well, yeah, I might be. I'll probably sell for $45,000, $40,000. He talked him down to $30,000 and bought that hotel that night. There was so many lessons there. That every one of you, he is here for a reason. There has never been a coincidence. There's not going to be a coincidence. That we ran into each other for a reason. That we met for a reason. That there's something we have to teach each other and something that we're going to learn from each other. And that when the time is right, you've got to act. And then you've got to ask people around you. And every lesson in that little vignette was so powerful. That's the type of thing that builds the biggest hotel empire in the world. Someone who just hears something and they think it's right and they go for it. And at some level, all of you have done that with the raw food diet. You've found some stream of truth in there, some flow of nature that works. This is a powerful science. It's different from anything else that's out there. When you eat raw food, you get back into the flow of nature, you become a natural animal again, you start living in harmony with the earth, and you start to see things you couldn't see before, your intuition works, you start to be able to act on things much more quickly, and it may not happen overnight, it may take 5 years to get over anger, it may take 10 years to get all the sludge finally out, but it will go just as sure as the day follows night. And people were in the detox thing happening, and they're in this stage where all the gunk is coming out. Let me tell you something. Spring follows winter. Pray tell how many times? Every time. With regularity for how long? Since eternity. Spring always follows winter, and there will be times when you go through when you're in the winter of your own life. We've all had our own personal winters, and every time there's a personal winter, springtime follows. So instead of saying, why is this happening? How am I going to get through this? You say, how can I enjoy this? There was a lyric in one of these songs that we were playing earlier. It said, what did it say? It said, you'll be, when everybody else is crying in the rain, you'll be laughing in the sun, even though it's raining. Because even in the middle of winter, you could be in the tropics, right here. That story really impacted me of how Hilton Hotels began. And it shows, for some of you who are starting your own business or have a little business going, you got to just act and go for it when the time is right. Strike when the juicer is hot. And if you hear the raw food diet and you're here right now, and you're getting this message, it's time. There's never been a better time. This is the best day ever. Right now. Whatever it took. I feel when I sit back at home, I look at what I've got going on in my life, and I think, whatever it took to get here is so good. All those times of partying with my friends and thinking, this is not leading me the direction I want to go. But there was lessons there to be learned. And all those winters, those personal history winters that you've been through, use that as a school rather than a jail to get yourself up to par. We're painting a picture here. You are a work of art in progress. Let me tell you something. You are a painting. And every time that you choose something up, you're painting a part of that picture that's you. And you're putting a little bit, every time you swallow some food, you are putting a little highlight on those clouds. And every time you choose the right color of food, ooh, that's a bright colored mango, I'm going to have that. You're adding a little bit of pizzazz and luminescence to the painting that you are. This is about becoming a more beautiful being on the earth, where people see you and go, yeah, that's where we're going with this planet. There are forces out there that don't want this truth out there. And I've come face to face with them. They don't want you to know. And just the fact that you know, bless you, run with it. Let's express some gratitude, a little bit, just that you got this. I have to say, every one of you comes from such a unique background and somehow you were attracted to it. Wow. Fascinating. You ever been in that flow? You know what it's like to be in that flow? You're all going to be there. You'll get there. You get into it. You do, especially you do the practice of yoga. And you do the raw foods. And you live your life in such a way where if little messages are coming your way and blocking you and stopping you from doing certain things, that instead of saying, okay, what do I need to get over that? Just saying, you know what, maybe I shouldn't go that way. Maybe I should go that way. Maybe the universe is trying to push me another way. You'll keep it rolling. Minerals. Let's talk about them. I gave you a little bit on minerals the other night when I was talking about acid-alkali balance. And then when you saw me at the talk the other night, I talked a bit about it. I wanted to get more specific about the acid-alkali balance and the sodium-potassium balance and talk about the insights in this book, which is just a great book. I mean, this is one of those where I was going through an Australian journal and I saw this book there. And I thought, outside shot, it's going to be a good book, but I'm going to order it anyway and see what this is all about. What a find! This guy's been a raw foodist for about 20 years. I got to do some lectures with him in Switzerland. Neat guy. What he figured out was that these dominant minerals here, hydrogen, oxygen, carbon, and nitrogen, which is what we mostly are, right? We're mostly water. Hydrogen is the most dominant part of water. Oxygen, then we're carbon, then we're nitrogen. 1, 2, 3, 4. Then number 5, we start getting into calcium, which is a mineral that strongly affects the way we think, feel, and behave. Strongly affects the mineral balance of all the other minerals in our body. It's kind of like the master switch. The next mineral after that is phosphorus. The next mineral after that is potassium, then sodium, then sulfur. These 4, though, what he figured out was these 4 and how they relate to each other can be used to change our state of mind, just to change our overall balance, to loosen us up before practice, a yoga practice, to tighten us up and get us more concentrated and focused when we need that. If you take we basically consist of all these minerals right here and all the foods that we eat and these trees right here and plants all consist of those minerals. When we take in a food, we're going to find that some foods are more dominant in calcium and a little bit more dominant in sodium, so they're more on this side, and have less of these things. So in this grid, they actually fall in over here. And some foods are higher in potassium and higher in phosphorus. So on this grid, if we charted it out, they would appear over here. And some foods are in that corner, and some foods are over here. And overall, if we eat something over here, then if we eat something there, we get a balance. If we find a food that fits in this grid over here, and we find another food that fits in the grid here, we'll find that they bounce each other off, and we feel like we're centered. Really fascinating work, because what I'm doing now is I'm taking this knowledge and I'm applying it to Dr. Jensen's work on minerals, because Dr. Bernard Jensen did amazing work on minerals, but what he didn't understand was that minerals only work in relation to each other. And the balance of minerals to each other and the effect of the calcium-phosphorus balance has one certain effect on our body, and this has another. The effect of the sulfur and fat balance in our body has another effect. I'll get into that in a little bit. And so I'm bringing that together, and that's where the cutting edge of my work is going right now. Well, what does this mean in simple terms? We talked about everything above this line yesterday we talked about is alkaline. That would be all leaves. That would be flowers. That would include some fruits. Everything below that line is acid forming, which is all seeds, meat. A bone is above the line, obviously. Bone above, meat below. Remember that? Roots, things that grow underneath the ground, and actually the majority of fruits. Some fruits are above, but the majority of fruits are either even keel or they're a little bit below that line. When we graph in this other understanding, the sodium-potassium thing, we really get an interesting relation. I'm going to put this one away and I'm going to actually draw this out so you can get a better idea, and I'll draw in the foods so you can get a picture of it, or if you want to write it down, I think that would help. So we've got this balance here. That's the sodium-potassium, or not sodium, that's the calcium-phosphorus balance. That's alkaline and acid. And then over here, we've got sodium, potassium, generally known as yang here and yin here. It was shown, this Japanese guy, Isadora, he's the guy who brought this understanding of Oriental medicine to America from Japan. He was the guy who first correlated the fact that foods that had a high residue of potassium were generally considered yin foods, and foods that had a high residue of salt or sodium were considered yang foods. So miso in the Japanese tradition generally is considered a very yang food because it's very salty. And fruit is considered yin because it's very high in potassium. Well, what's this balance look like? Let's take a food, kale. Kale comes in over here. It is high in calcium, high in sodium. The opposite of that food would probably be something like avocado, which is high in potassium and phosphorus. And if you find, you know that if you eat those two together, it goes well together, doesn't it? You ever notice that? What else is over here? Well, right here we have an orange. And an orange goes very well when someone's eating a very heavy diet of, say, let's just say meat, for example, which is high in phosphorus, high in salt. So a lot of people say, well, you should eat a lot of oranges if you're eating that kind of diet, or you should do an orange juice fast, or you should drink lots of orange juice, which has kind of gotten perverted when in the modern day we have pasteurized seedless orange juice, which is not really natural. Now that's why orange juice became so big, is because it balances off this type of heavy meat diet with lots of salt in it. Over here we have nuts. So nuts balance off very well with something like celery, which has a lot of salt in it. Celery is very salty. If you are doing a lot of exercise, if you're doing a very vigorous practice and you're sweating a lot, or if you're an athlete, you got to take in minimum 4 to 6 ribs of celery every day. Minimum. And you could juice that if you want to, just to get enough salt in your body. Very balancing on the raw food diet, because most foods we're going to discover here are way in, are potassium rich. And the salty foods generally are more difficult to come by and have a very powerful role. I did years of doing almost no salt in my diet. I ate greens that were over here instead of over here, and therefore wasn't getting enough salt, and I started to burn out. Whenever I would do something vigorous, I'd be like, geez, it's not there, and it was not enough salt. We'll find things like lettuce on this side, parsley, cilantro, broccoli are all over here. These foods now on this side, very important, are heating. And these foods on this side are cooling. It's known where I come from, my mom is from Tehran, Iran. In the deserts there, you gotta have salt with you. If you don't have salt, you die. Because the salt cools you. Salt has what's called an endothermic reaction. When you take in salt and it's metabolized, it will actually suck heat out of your body as it's being metabolized. Potassium has an exothermic reaction, whereas as you're metabolizing potassium, it releases heat into your body. Foods that people say, oh, I gotta have a baked potato because I need something that's warming. Well, potato, you'll find, is way, way out here in potassium. Very high in potassium. So is squash. And I'll give an A+ to anyone who can tell me what the highest potassium food is. Okay, so we gotta guess with bananas. Bananas not even close. Dates are pretty high, they're not even close. By far the highest potassium-rich food that grows on the earth that I know of is pumpkin. Now, when does pumpkin grow?
End of summer.
End of summer, fall. Really, fall, October.
Same like nuts.
Right, and that's when nuts are available, and dried fruits like dates. And dates are over here, and bananas are over here. Pumpkin, powerful food, because if you've ever eaten a pumpkin raw, you really got to be kind of acclimated to the raw food diet to eat a pumpkin raw. But when you get a good one, it's really good. But it'll last the whole winter. A good apple, a wild apple, like a black. You ever had a black apple? Mm-hmm. Natural black apple, heirloom variety, will last 10 months. You get these things out there, these commercial things have been waxed. Within 2 weeks, they're soft, and they get this weird softness when you chew into them. You ever had that? Or you ever bite into an apple and go, bleh? It's just hollow. No minerals in there. Now you can tell, once you understand this chart right here, you will start to know, okay, that broccoli, that's a heating food, that's potassium food. I'm not getting much salt in that food, so maybe next day's dinner is going to have a little kale in there. I find that in the wintertime, my own body balance wants to balance more onto this side to get the stuff that's a little bit more heating, and in the summertime I want to balance more on this side and get the more cooling stuff. You want to cool off in the summer, drink a celery juice, that works. Seaweeds generally are in this range. They're alkaline and they're very salty. And you got to be careful if you're in a cold climate, some of you live in a cold climate, that you don't eat too much seaweed before you go out in the snow. I've done that before. That can be dangerous. You can cool yourself so rapidly that it can be actually a critical situation. If you're out there doing heavy labor in the snow and your body's cooling off, that can be troublesome. What else? What other foods do we have here? Most of the fruits we find actually fit right into this sort of range, like that. The green leafy vegetables are over here, with some exceptions, and some exceptions with fruit. There's the alkaline fruits, which are here. There's meat, bread, and cheese. Cheese is over here. Meat and bread are over here.
Is table salt on here? Is it Celtic salt?
Celtic salt would be probably like up here, because it has a lot of calcium, magnesium, and salt in it. Okay, we're going to take a little break here, because we're going to switch tapes. Let's all kind of stretch out and loosen